Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this one's going to be an interesting one. This is the Surron Storm Bee. I'm going to compare it to the Surron Ultra Bee, and I'm going to do a weird thing that I don't usually do off the top of my videos, but I'm assuming you're going to have far more questions than I can answer in this video, or that I will answer, because I own this bike and there's a lot more to it than what I'm talking about just here. And I've done other videos and I will continue to do other videos on these bikes. So the weird thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you right off the top for your subscription, if you want to subscribe to this channel, because if you have questions about either of these, I want to know what you want to know, because as motorcycles are moving into this electric realm, I think there's going to be questions. Some questions from people say, I'm a gas only person. Hey, no problem. I've got a gas motorcycle as well, and that is absolutely perfect for what I do on that bike, but this one's perfect for what I do on the dirt. And then there's also gonna be questions from the electric side of people that kind of wanna know, and then I think there's also just general questions about them. So if you have questions about either of these vehicles or anything in the Surron lineup, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments what you wanna know, because I'm filming here at McLean Sports and they give me complete access to their entire vehicle line, not just the Surrons. But I can make sure that I can answer your questions both in the comment section and in future videos. So what I'm really trying to do here is figure out what you want to know about these. And if your comment is just, hey, electric is crap, sure, like that's fine. You don't have to let me know that. I know that this video isn't for you. But if you're sort of considering these, those are the people I want to hear from, and let me know what you want to know about these bikes. And we'll do a riding review in the future. Like I said, I own this one. We can go out riding and I can, access other ones for riding reviews as well. But that's what this video is about. I'm going to go through and compare these two bikes and try to figure out what you want to know so I can make better videos for you in the future. We can create a video database of the information that you want. Kind of a long intro. Let's get going with the comparison review. All right, so I don't like to do this, but I am going to use my cheat sheet today, my trusty iPad, to talk about these two bikes. Like I said, if there's a bias at all, I own this one. I think this is a perfect bike for me, but I think this is a better dirt bike than that one. But there are some caveats to that because it depends on what you're looking for. Now, first of all, some of these in some countries might be road legal, dual sport. Here in Canada, as far as I know, although this one does have signals on the front, as far as I know, these are both dirt only bikes. And if you're like me and you can go from your house to the trails and not really have to go on any roads or anything like that, then this is perfect. But of course, they're also easily trailerable, easily transportable because they're dirt bikes. So let's start talking about these, and I want to clear up some spec type things. First of all, this one has, according to Surron, a 140 kilometer range, which doesn't sound like much, but it's that 140 kilometers at 40 kilometers an hour. And it's, it sort of says depending on terrain and that kind of thing. So that's the number they use. This one, although it's bigger, they say has a 120 kilometer range, but at 50 kilometers per hour. So basically 140 kilometer range at a slower speed. I don't know what this one would do at 50 kilometers an hour, because this one's capable of going over 90. I've been there, and this one I would assume would be more powerful again. So how much range do they have? Essentially, I would say that if you are a casual trail rider, you can ride a lot. Like, I've gotten far more tired on this bike before the bike's come anywhere near running out of battery. If you're an aggressive rider, then yeah, you have to talk about how long it's going to ride, and it's hard for me to estimate, or hard for anybody to estimate, exactly how long of range you're going to have. And that's why we'll do some riding reviews, and I'll ride it casually, and maybe we'll get someone else to ride it a little more aggressively to figure out kind of your range. But range is a tough thing to figure out. If you're a casual rider, trust me, you can go out for hours and have a blast on trails, and that's what I bought this for. I'm not someone who jumps over sky-high jumps, although you can. I do little small jumps and that kind of thing. So that's the range. The other thing that's very confusing on here is the torque number. This one's peak torque is 325 foot-pounds. This one over here is, and let me just jump to that page, is 383 foot-pounds. Now, the first thing you can do with torque numbers is just throw them away. If you think about that torque number compared to your car or even your truck, it's probably at that number or more than your car or truck, which is kind of misleading. Electric vehicles have instant torque down low, and that's great, but 325 foot-pounds of torque in a car would send this thing just wheeling nonstop. Now, you can wheelie, but you'd be doing cartwheels. So Torque is a strange number to look at with electric vehicles, but what I want you to know is this one has a little bit more torque than this one. Range-wise, again, because of the way they do specs, we'll have to talk about that. Now let's start digging into the actual features of these bikes, because the other key difference is about 100 pounds difference. This one is 187 pounds, and this one over here, if I can find it exactly very quickly, is listed at 280 pounds. So 187 and 280. Both are pretty lightweight for dirt bikes, but this one is especially lightweight. So let's talk about some of the specs right now. So before we go over the details of these bikes, let's just do the simplest thing and sit on them both. First of all, this is more dirt bike style. You can look at the specs that I was just looking at surron.ca to see everything you need to know. But basically what you have is a pretty good dirt bike here that doesn't feel that tall. Like, I'm flat footing this, and it's not because you don't have great suspension travel. It's, you know, it's just a different kind of riding bike. So this is supposedly the bigger one. You can look up the specs, like the seat heights on these, and you compare them to other dirt bikes, but of course dirt bikes are generally pretty narrow, but they're sometimes a little bit different. What you have the advantage of this one is, because both of the hand grips here are brakes, you have a little bit more room in front and behind of your pegs here, and that means that you have some room to go down and a little bit more room to, on uneven terrain, have your feet close to the bike. So again, basically flat footing on this one. Let's just go in the same shot over to the Ultra B from the Storm B and show you, and this one is a little bit smaller. So where does that size come from? Again, still flat footing, narrower again, but very comfortable seat for someone like me. But you can really feel the difference. 187 pounds, it almost feels like a bicycle. And when I say that, I really mean that. You can't really do this with a regular dirt bike. And you can see, you know, maybe I'm straining a little bit, but it's pretty light. You can pick it up, move it around. I've dumped this in the mud, just picked it right back up. If it falls on you, I mean, I guess it could hurt you, but it's not gonna hurt you as much as a full-size dirt bike. So some advantages in weight and size, and some of the key things are tire sizes. That's different on this and standard on that. So let's talk about that by going from tire size, suspension, work our way through and get to the dashes. All right, so we're looking at the Ultra B, and if you're still having trouble with the names like I sometimes do, Ultra B is the lightweight one. So this one has 19-inch tires front and rear. Now they are different widths. What's interesting about this is you can upgrade to larger tires. A lot of bikes have, like, say, a 21-inch in the front and an 18 on the back. You can go larger diameter. You can also go a little bit wider on these to make this into the dirt bike you want. However, you know, there will be people that complain about these tires and say it's not this right for them. Most of those people have a lot more dirt experience than I do. What I find is this is absolutely perfect. And one of the things I really enjoy about this bike is on an entry-level, lighter weight bike, which is really how you get to a lightweight bike. You have to go entry-level on a gas bike. You don't tend to have the suspension adjustments that this one has. The suspension on both of these bikes is phenomenal, and you can adjust them. You can see there's adjustments down here. There's adjustments at the top of the fork tube. These are upside-down forks, so you have a little bit less unsprung weight, a little bit more stiffness up top. And you've got good motorcycle style brakes, which the Surron Light B has more e-bike or mountain bike style brakes. So you've got motorcycle components here, but some people will complain about that smaller wheel. If you are someone that is going to be jumping, has heavy dirt riding experience, this may not be the wheel set for you. If you're like me and you want a secondary bike to go out on the dirt trails and have some fun with it, this is perfect for me. I see no need for me to upgrade at this point. Maybe as my skills get a little better and my riding experience goes a little more, maybe I will at some point. And the nice thing is you can. Now let's look at this Storm B's front wheel. So as you would expect, going from one motorcycle to the other and having 93 pounds more weight just in the bike itself, you're going to have a little bit beefier construction here. And you actually have about a centimeter bigger fork tube. So I think it's 37 and 47 millimeter fork tubes. So quite a bit bigger. Both are good for sort of dirt bike style, but again, heavier duty stuff here, and that's what you would expect. You also have the 21-inch front tire, the 18-inch rear tire, so you're now into proper dirt bike sizes, and you've definitely got a knobbier dirt bike style tire. You've got, you know, noticeably larger rims, you've got noticeably different brakes, you still have the adjustable suspension, and that's one of the key things with these bikes. Both are still relatively lightweight in the dirt bike segment, but again, to get a lightweight dirt bike, you tend to have to go to a very entry-level, you know, entry-level bike, and then you'll be paying to upgrade suspension anyways. On this one, upside-down forks again, fully adjustable, up top as well. We'll show you them as we get there. And you've got a great suspension setup on both of these bikes, and that's a real key. So we're back on the Ultra B here, again, the lightest weight of the two that we're looking at today. And you can see, since we're talking about suspension, you've got a great rear suspension as well. Fully adjustable up here. You've got preload adjustment in there as well. And everything is linkaged up to be low weight and centralized. So not only are these lightweight bikes, the weight is very much centralized, and that makes it easy handling bikes. These are very, very balanced bikes. We've got a battery in here. That's your motor, and it runs through a belt into a chain that runs it. The only sound you have is a slight whirring sound, and the chain here running on the chain guard. That's what you generally hear if you see these riding reviews of this bike, is the chain running on that chain guard. What's cool about this is McLean's gave me the privilege of taking my son out on the Light B, and I went out on this. We could communicate just talking back and forth while riding, which was amazing to do on a dirt bike. So you've got a really cool frame in here. This one's new for 2023, this whole bike is, and you can see some modernness to it. It's got a little bit of a green color there, very narrow, not only in the seat, but also in the whole frame. And again, no foot pegs, so no foot brake and no shifter. Again, the torque takes care of that. We're gonna talk about torque and suspension in a second. Let's just look at the same view on the Storm B. So here on the Storm B, you have a couple things worth noting. You have a bigger foot peg here. Now, both these are both very good for off-road. And what I like is you can sort of keep your feet off the pegs when you need to. If you're going through a really slippery situation, slow speed, you can just kind of hang your feet down there like a rookie like me. But you see some differences in the frame here. You know, just sort of this traditional sort of style, whereas I think the Storm B has more of a cool, or the Ultra B has a little bit more of a cool look than the Storm B. You'll also notice the battery here is set like this instead of up and down, which again lowers that weight down, and you've got a little different drive unit down there, driving everything out here. Chain sides, of course, on the opposite side of this one. So chain sides on the left side on this one, it's on the right side on the Ultra B. I don't know why. You get the brakes over here, again, dirt bike style brakes. So a little more utilitarian to me, although I don't know that you're gonna notice the difference. And you can see, again, adjustable shocks and a little different angle, everything there to fit everything in. But again, very centralized weight and quality suspension. So I want to pause here for a second before we get into some of the other details of these bikes to talk about why suspension is important, because it's different on these bikes. One of the key reasons I bought this is because I was looking at bikes like a Kawasaki KLX 300 and, you know, Honda's equivalent. Everybody's got their own equivalent, Yamaha, Suzuki, they've all got their equivalents of those kinds of bikes. And what I didn't like about them that I do like about my road bike is my road bike has really advanced suspension. And I think it's the same with dirt bikes. Your enjoyment is partly in the power, but it's a huge part in the suspension. And both of these bikes are lightweight. Both of them have fully adjustable suspension, which means that you can not only tailor them for your riding environment or your riding style, it means as you grow with the bike, you can also tailor that suspension to yourself. Now, if you know nothing about adjusting suspension, if you're around my weight, I'm about 175 pounds, this bike is set up pretty good for trail riding just for my weight. But you can customize it and you can tweak it and you can do it while you're riding. We've got an ambulance going by here. But you can do it while you're riding if you want to, because a lot of it's adjustable on your own. And that's a really key differentiator between the lightweight gas bikes that are a little bit cheaper than these and these bikes here. You don't have to upgrade the suspension to get a phenomenal riding experience. And then we should talk about electric torque. Again, no gears means it's a little easier to ride because you're not balancing the clutch, you're not you know, running into a power band at a certain point, you've got power everywhere. And to me, that makes these easier to ride, especially since you have all that torque down low. A lot of the gas equivalents have very small engines. To get a lightweight bike, you need a very small engine. Small engines, to get the power you want, need to rev, which means you don't actually have peak power until you're higher in the rev range. Whereas with these ones, you've got power everywhere, from down low to the mid-range to up high, you've always got power. And it really makes riding far more enjoyable, and it also makes bikes that are not, you know, crazy powerful feel very powerful, especially in that low to mid-range speed that you're going to be trail riding on both of these bikes. So now let's dig into a few more controls. So one interesting bit about these dirt bikes is they actually have a dash, and that leads some people to think maybe it could be an on-road, off-road bike. Again, here in Canada, where I'm filming, not fully legal on the roads that I know of, although we could maybe figure that out. Maybe that's changes in the future. So I'm not going to show you every detail in the dash. I think that's really best done on a separate video, and I will do that on my Ultra B, which is a little bit different. We'll just go through the dash and make sense of it. But one of the key pieces, you do have a speedometer, you have sort of a fuel gauge, which is your battery gauge. 51% is what this one's at, but you can see also the gauge there. So you have not just the gauge. This isn't very helpful because if it's, let's say it's 5 things and every bar is 20%. So having an actual percentage, because the difference between 1% and 20% is often, the same bar. So what you see here is a proper percentage and the bar. There's also a number of things like you have traction control on this, which we'll talk about in a second. I thought it would be completely useless, but it makes total sense. You also have drive modes on this, which again, I didn't understand, but if you understand electric vehicles, that makes some sense. You even have a reverse gear because all you have to do is reverse the direction of the current to help you push this backwards, which again, you don't think you need until you're walking it in your garage. It just makes it easier. But more importantly than that, when you're out on the trail and you want to turn around, it's hard to maneuver a dirt bike around sometimes. This one reverses backwards, goes forward. It really makes it maneuverable. So there's the dash. Like I said, we'll cover this one in the future, but I will compare it just really briefly to the Ultra B, and then we'll look at all the controls here. So let's go from dash to controls on the Storm B, and then we'll jump to the Ultra B. All right, left side here, this is a brake, not a clutch, and you get used to that pretty quickly. It took me a little while. I went yesterday from my street bike to my dirt bike and had no trouble adjusting to the clutch area. It just does take a second or two, but again, I can now ride them in the same day back to back and have no issues. This little trigger here is not for your headlight. It doesn't have any other trigger than this one on the Storm B. On the Ultra B, which again, new for 2023, it does have a little bit more controls here. So right now, all this is controls your traction control. We're gonna talk about that in a second, but you can trap it 1, 2, 3 times to turn it on or hold it to turn it on. You also have 3 different traction control settings. Then you have high beams and low beams. Yes, you have headlights on this. We'll talk about that. A turbo mode to give you a little bit extra full power for short spurts. And again, you still have the multiple drive modes. We'll talk about that more on the Ultra B. You do have a horn down here, which you don't think you need on a dirt bike until you realize that you are silent. So letting people know that you're there with a very loud horn is kind of nice. And this one does have signals here in the front. Again, if you're just zipping on the roads to get the trails, kind of nice to have. Over on the right side, let's take a look over there. Right side is throttle side, pretty familiar to motorcyclists. You could put mirrors on this if you wanted to. That's why that's set up like that. You also have your kill switch here, which works like a motorcycle kill switch, except doesn't turn on the vehicle, right? Then you have your drive modes in here, and then your reverse and your some of your traction control modes you can tap through here. So you hold that button down and spin the throttle and activates reverse. It's a little awkward on this bike because it's on the same side as your throttle. They changed that on the Ultra B, and I wonder if they'll update that on the Storm B in the future. But again, reverse is not something you use often, but if you're in a muddy situation, it is super helpful to use reverse to get out. So that's the Storm B. Let's compare that really quickly to the Ultra B. All right, we're showing it fully wide angle for a second right now. It's a little skewed at the sides just because the camera kind of skews things out. But we'll zoom in here a little bit, and we'll zoom in here a little bit more, and you can see the dash right here. So turning this dash on, you're not gonna be able to tell this on camera, but there's one thing I don't love about this dash, and that's right over here. I can't read that number while I'm riding because I'm supposed to wear glasses when I look at a computer screen. It says 64%, and I can read that when I'm smooth. So you're relying on your battery gauge in bars, and you have to really squint to see that, or if you've got bad eyesight like me, you may not be able to read that. So I would like it if that was bigger, but the rest of the stuff is pretty simple stuff. You have traction control in here, again, 3 levels of traction control. You have 3 driving modes, so you have sport mode right there, you have eco mode right there, and you have a daily mode right there. And you can switch to eco at any time, so even if I'm in sport, you can you can switch between them easily. I'll show you the controls in there, how they work in just a second. Traction control, again, I can turn that on by holding it there or by tapping it, or I can do the 1, 2, 3 of that bar, and it comes on and stays on. And you can see here, it's currently set to 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you can sort of, let's just zoom in there. 1, 2, 3 bars right there. So that is something that you can see how much traction control you have. And there's a lot of settings here. We're gonna talk about some settings. Actually, let's just talk about them right now. Obviously, you have the drive modes. You also have the ability to set your traction control to 3 different settings. You have the ability to set it so if the bike tips over, that the power will cut itself off. You have the ability to change your regenerative braking settings. So when you tap the, let's go full wide angle, when you tap the brakes, you can have the engine regenerate. You also have a coasting mode that allows regeneration. There's about 5 modes of that for each, and we'll show you that in a future thing. So these all get kind of complicated to talk about in a video, but they actually make some sense. And when I do a riding review, I'll explain where you would use those, where there's problems, where there's good things, and that kind of thing to that. So you've got that kind of mode. There's a whole bunch of other modes that you can adjust in here, and it's actually very simple to do. And the best part is they give you a little key tag about the size of that. So you have a key tag to tell you what each mode means. So you'll just swap into the settings right there, and you can see I'll cycle through. There's a B, there's an E, there's an A, so there's a P, there's a C, there's an F, and there's a TO, as well as a youth. Sorry, forgot about them all right there. So you have all those settings. I can explain all those in a future video, but the point is it's super easy to adjust those settings on the fly. All right, just want to show the left side handlebar from the front side. This is your traction control button, and this is your flash your high beam button. Again, it has headlights, so you can flash your high beam right there. So just like a regular motorcycle often has that, you don't confuse it because your traction control is right there. Again, I want to talk about traction control in a second. We'll talk about where it's useful and why I didn't think I needed it, but now I like it. And then we'll look at the controls here on this side first. So over on the backside, again, you can kind of tell this bike was designed after the Storm Bee, just from a couple simple things. So your headlights, high beam or low beam, or if you don't want them on at all, you can turn them off like that. So you'll have a daytime running light out front, just a little dinky little light, but your actual headlight, which is quite bright, and sometimes you want it off, you can turn it on or off like that. So you just turn it on, low beam, high beam like that, and you can of course flash the high beam with the trigger down here, and there's your trigger right there for the traction control. So I like that. The horn is down here. Signal lights I would assume go in here in other markets, and then this is where you have your reverse. So you can tap that to access some controls, but you can hold it to activate your reverse mode to go backwards, which again, being on the opposite handlebar makes more sense than your throttle. Let's look at throttle side for 1 second. All right, throttle side, simple motorcycle throttle, easy to control. There's a little button right here, which is a ready button. So once the bike's kickstands up, it's on, you tap that and it'll give you a little ready light so you can get going. And basically what that means is if there's no green ready light on your dash, if you accidentally spin the throttle, it's not going anywhere. This doesn't have a clutch, so you don't want the throttle always active, right? Essentially, you can put this in a neutral type setting where if you did spin that in the dirt, it's not going anywhere. So you have that ability there for that ready switch. Kill switch right there, and your drive modes. Drive modes are kind of cool because you can go sport, or you can go daily, or at any point you can tap it in and put it in eco. So if I'm in daily, I can tap it in for eco. I don't have to sort of cycle up or down. You just tap it in for eco. And eco mode sort of kills the top speed a little bit, definitely dulls the throttle. Sport makes it easy to wheelie. Daily mode is what I ride in all the time. I think that's the best mode to ride in for most people. It still gives you full power, just a little less aggressive throttle. So after completely overwhelming you with all of those riding modes, let's talk about why I've kind of been converted to why they work. Now, just so you know, you should probably know my background. I've been involved with electric vehicles for a long, long time, and you know, definitely more on the car side than the motorcycle side. I don't think most motorcycles are ready for electric. And the same thing, I don't think replacing a pickup truck for pickup truck type things is ready for electric. I will say though that dirt bikes are probably one of the best options, and there's some things that you have to consider with a dirt bike that becomes electric. First of all, you can make them lightweight, which is kind of cool because most electric vehicles, when you go on the car side, they end up getting heavier. So that's kind of an interesting difference there. But because you have no gears or no requirement for gears because you have so much torque, you end up with a different feeling ride. Again, some people are going to miss that clutch. I think you'll probably miss that clutch less than you think on a bike like this because it's very rideable. But because you've got maximum torque the whole way through your rev range, or most of the way through your rev range, you end up with something that does require some assistance and some tuning, because on a gas bike, you can keep the revs high or keep the revs low. You can drag the clutch, slide the clutch a little bit, slip the clutch a little bit, and allow a bike to behave in a certain way. On this, you've only got throttle off or rolling on, and it can behave differently. So having that sport mode allows you to kind of have that pop the clutch kind of feeling and easily wheelie, which can be really useful out on the trail. You want to get that front wheel light, you can do that, and it's easiest to do that in sport mode. The flip side is it's hard to drive like that all the time, so you can go right down to that eco mode, which is going to make that throttle less sensitive. So if you're in a really bumpy area that you want to just go at a certain speed, you can move that throttle without having that jerkiness back and forth because you've got that instant torque right there. So the drive modes are important. The other thing that I didn't think I would need is traction control, and in fact I turned it off and stopped using it. Where I found the traction control works very, very well is in muddy situations, and it kind of blew my mind. It makes sense. You go into some mud with some momentum, with traction control off, and you go in and the rear wheel bogs down and it sits down and you end up getting stuck. And if you fall over, at least you can pick this up. Now, where it works with traction control that I found was interesting is you go into the mud with some momentum and the rear wheel will bog down, and then because you have momentum, the rear wheel will stop giving it power, it'll roll forward, and you come up out of that bog, and then you'll keep rolling forward, it'll bog down again, it'll pop out. So what happens through a muddy section it's almost like at least I don't have the skill to get through just with throttle. I would bog down and I'd keep going, I'd bog down, whereas I could go through the exact same section with the traction control on in its max setting, and the rear wheel would bounce, 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 and I'd go through. So because it's electric, some of these modes matter. Now the other thing is regenerative braking, regenerative coasting, that kind of thing. When you have the regenerative braking, if you touch either brake lever, front or rear, you can touch your front brake lever and have some power going to the rear for regenerative. You could also set, when you're going down a hill, the regenerative braking is kind of like an engine braking, so it doesn't actually activate your brakes, but it gives you that rear wheel engine braking that a lot of dirt bikes have, and you can customize that for the trail, and it's just a couple clicks away. Click, 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 boom, you're done. You've adjusted the regeneration. It sounds very complicated, but once you understand, and it really takes about 60 seconds of riding to go, oh, I understand how that works and why I want to do that. It's very easy to deal with. And what blows my mind is some cars have 1,000 features and you use 2. Think of your cell phone. It has 1,000 features and you kind of used 15. This thing has, 50 features, 20 features, whatever it is, but you tend to use them because it makes sense. So that's one thing to keep in mind with electric bikes, is having those modes matter. And I think what you're gonna see with electric vehicles, electric motorcycles in the future, is they won't have those features. Surron's done their homework. They know how these things ride and they know what you need. And having the option to have some of those features makes it more enjoyable and more rideable. So let's wrap this up quickly by telling you which one might be better for you. Now let's start with the Ultra B, because this one was better for me. This one is more cost effective. It just came out in 2023, so it has a few little updates that I kind of like. Now it is still more expensive than a gas bike, but as an example, yesterday I went out on my road going gasoline motorcycle and had a blast. I love that bike, but I came back and rode this in the evening, and I was talking to my kids, and these miles per minute with this bike is far better than any motorcycle I've ever had. And it has to do with a combination of a few things. It is so lightweight, it is so confidence inspiring, it can be so much fun. I was going over jumps yesterday in my yard, I was zipping around in my yard quietly, not disturbing my neighbors, doing all kinds of things, wheeling a little bit, doing all those fun things that you can do, but you can do it from a confidence inspiring place because this thing is so lightweight. Now, again, compared to a gas bike, like I said, more expensive, but you also have some fuel savings in here because you never have to go out and get fuel, you never have to do that. And for me, it's got all the range I'm gonna need for riding. You also don't have to do things like carb adjustments or valve adjustments or oil changes. Basically, the biggest parts of your maintenance on a dirt bike are gone. And for me, this is a secondary bike. It's gonna spend a bunch of time sitting until I really wanna go use it. It's not something I use every day like my gas bike as much as I can. So the simplicity of this, to be able to take the battery out of here and throw it inside my house and charge it in there in the winter or do whatever I want, that's my maintenance for winterizing this thing. Drop the battery out, leave it in my house, drop the battery in, and you can charge it both on the bike and separate from the bike with both of these. So miles per minute on a bike like this are sky high, and although it does cost a little more, I do think this one has some value. This one loses a little bit in the value equation compared to a gas bike, but this one gets you into a true dirt bike replacement. You're able to really jump this. You're able to really take it in places that you would take any other dirt bike. It is heavier duty built. It does weigh 93 or so pounds more than that one, and it feels a little bit more like a dirt bike. But again, on your miles per minute, these electric bikes with their torque down low and fantastic suspension really open that up. So, where are electric bikes today? If you have a little bit of extra money to spend on a dirt bike like this, you'll probably enjoy it, maybe even more than gas, depending on your riding style. If you don't have a lot more money, but you want something interesting with high smile, low maintenance, this is really your option as well. So there's my review. Let me know in the comments which one's best for you. Make sure you give McLean Sports a little like on this video so that they know that you appreciate them giving me access. And of course, if you want to see these in person, there's the Light B, the Ultra B, and the Storm B in stock right now at McLean Sports. Swing on down to French and New Brunswick. Check them out. We'll talk to you in the next one.